Shalom Aleichem. Mishnah Yomi is in the first chapter of Bava Metzia, Mishnayot 4 and 5 today. Mishnah Daled, Ra'at HaMetzia. He sees a found object. Really means an object that's hefker, that's out in the streets, in the public area where the original owners gave up hope, or it's out in the wilderness. V'nafol aleha, and he falls on top of the object. He's jumping onto the object to block other people from seeing it or grabbing it. Uva'acher, and a second person comes along, v'hechzik ba, takes a hold of it and picks it up. Zeh shehechzik ba zochaba, the one who grabbed it and actually put it in his hand, picked it up, he owns the object, not the first guy. The reason is falling on something is not a legally recognized acquisition. In the Gemara, they explain there is a rabbinical form of acquisition, a kinyan derabonon, of dalid amot, of something in your personal space that our sages enacted so people wouldn't come start fighting over things that are close by someone else, that if there's something in your personal space, it's hefker, it's ownerless, you can say, I'm acquiring this object by dint of my personal space. This guy didn't do it, he just jumped on top of it. That's not an acquisition, so the second guy wins, he owns it. Next case in the Mishnah, Ra'utan Rotzin Achar Metzia. He sees people and they're running after an ownerless object. For instance, Achar Tzvi Shavor, after a tzvi, a deer that can't run so fast. It could have been it has a wounded leg, or it could be they were throwing a net to try to catch this deer and it just got tangled in its feet. Now the deer is trying to run away slowly. Or Achar Gozlot Shalo Parchor, or after pigeons who can't fly. They're very young pigeons, or their wings are sticky, they can't really fly away, they're kind of hopping. The Amar, and he says, Zochta li sodi, my field is acquiring these objects. Zochta lo, that does work as a kinyan, and that's when these animals are in his field. You can't use your property to acquire something that's not on your property, but a kinyan hatzer, it's called. He can acquire objects that are in his privately owned personal space. Even if other people happen to be running after them, his space can acquire this type of object. And that's because it's not automatically going to run out. As the Mishnah explains, Hayat Tzvi Ratz Kedarko, if a Tzvi was running normally, which is pretty fast, or these pigeons could fly. Amar Zochtali Sadi says, I want my field to acquire these animals. Lo Amar Klum. That doesn't work because his field cannot acquire these items because he couldn't stop these items from actually leaving his field. Instead, probably the guy who's chasing after it might catch it first. Whoever catches it first and does a valid legal kinyan will own it. Mishnah Hey, Metziat Beno Bito Katanim. The found object of his son or his daughter when they are young, before bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah. But the Bartanura points out here, based on the Gemara, Kol shesomich al shulchan aviv afilu hu gadol kare le kotan. Anyone who's being supported by his parents, he's living at home and his parents are paying the bill, he's still a katan regarding this particular halacha we're about to see. And the Mishnah goes on, Metziat avdo v'shuratu aknanim, a found object by his servant or female servant, which is the Kanani nature, or Metziat ishto, something his wife happens to find that was hefker, hare elu shalo, they belong to the father, the husband, the master in all of these cases. Now for the children and the wife, the reason is even if they're old enough to make their own kinyanim and have legal acquisitions and buy and sell, the father, the husband, is the one supporting them and paying the bills. So mishum eva, because he would get very upset if the children or the wife find something valuable and he's paying all of the bills, all the tuition, all of the clothing, and putting food on the table, and they're not sharing with it. As we mentioned in Ketuvot and Kedushin, that the Torah sets up a situation where the father, the husband, is responsible for paying all of the bills, and the wife is expected to chip in and try to help take the burden off, but really at the end of the day, it's the husband's obligation to pay all the bills. So Mishum Eva, our sages had a takana that he should also get whatever she finds. The Mishnah goes on, Mitziat Beno Bito Agedolim, a found object by his children who are all grown up, meaning they're all grown up and they have their own job or their own apartment. Metziat avda v'shivchato ha'ivrim, a metzia from a servant who is an Eved Ivri. He was a Jewish before he started. We mentioned Eved Kanani is sort of quasi-Jewish. He goes to the mikveh and has to keep the mitzvot lo taseh, has to keep Shabbos, has to keep kosher, but he's sort of on the way to being fully Jewish, but not yet fully Jewish. So this is a fully Jewish worker. Metziat ishto shegersha, the found object of a wife that he divorced. The Mishnah explains, awful pi shelo natan ketuvata, even though he has not given her the ketuva payment after the divorce, harei elu shalahen, they do keep that. The Gemara explains this last case, he divorced her, but he's not paying. What are they talking about? So in the Gemara, they say this is a case where there's a suffix, there's a doubt. We talked about this in Gittin. What if he threw her the get, and we're not sure if it landed closer to him or her, and that's a suffix. We don't know if this divorce went through. So we say in this case that he has to keep feeding her and supporting her, or give her the ketuvah. And of course, give her a get again, kedasa kedin, make it actually work this time. So as long as the husband in this case doesn't pay her the ketuvah and give her a new get, he has to keep feeding her. So even in that case, even though he's paying the bills, there's no takana mishum eva, because after all, they're sort of, on the way to being divorced already. He threw her a get, and there's all sorts of shilas about it. So there should be eva in that case, so they'll actually finally end that dysfunctional relationship. So whatever she finds does not go to the husband in that case. Yashar kochachem tizku mitzvot.